Yeah, hello. My name is Mikhail Permanov. I am doing a presentation on capitalism and masculinity, an application of Marxism to young working men in Florida. Um, I am a incoming freshman at Princeton University. I worked as a freelance tutor for a bit over half a year, and my I plan to major in public policy. Now, Armand, Martin, introduce yourselves.
Right. Hi, I'm Armand Alexis. I'm an incoming freshman at Florida Atlantic University. I've run my own business since 2021, and I'm a data analytics major.
Hi, I'm Martin Gonzalez. I'm an incoming freshman at DePaul University in Chicago. I worked as a light line technician, which is a fancy term for mechanic, at Jiffy Lube for a little over a year, but I'm no longer working there.
Mhm. Right. And just asking, how familiar are you guys with Karl Marx's writings or Marxism in general?
Not really at all.
I've heard his
Mhm.
name tossed around a bit, but I'm not quite familiar with anything specific.
Right. So basically, uh, it kind of can be said that people produce commodities using a certain amount of hours that they put into their work. And I mean, these ideas are still relevant today because, workers put in um, social labor, but I guess I should kind of explain it in simpler terms. Just people put in labor to produce commodities. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good, yeah.
Right. And kind of there's an assumption in kind of America and America being capitalist society that kind of wages, what you get paid, are kind of an accurate representation of how much work you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Right. But kind of how the system works is the capitalist, the person who owns the labor, um, takes a portion of the work the person puts in, the hours. So if someone, um, I guess, if someone in a factory spent 6 hours making something, um, they could get a certain amount of the value produced from that product, and the capitalist would take the rest. But I'm wondering, kind of, how do you guys think that? I guess how do you guys think the capitalist system affects, uh, I guess, young men, and what role does money and do wages play in your life?
Oh, that's a heavy question there, my friend.
Got to think on it for a minute.
No, take your time. It's fine. hmm Well, I think that you know because kind of as a because I worked as a freelance tutor, my
Yeah,
experience in capitalism was like kind of very different because I wasn't really well. I was selling. I was giving my work for money to someone
yeah.
directly. Um, but then you, for example, Martin, when you
hmm
fix a car and you kind of the people pay you,
hmm
um, you don't get all of that money, right? Or um, for the money that they pay for the service. How does the wage system at Jiffy Lube work?
Well, it's basically just like any other big corporation where the money goes directly to the company and then they have to distribute it to the workers. And
hmm
all the higher ups, I guess you could say, make the most money while us low life mechanics with grease on our hands make the least. That's
hmm
how,
Right.
it works. A lot of places, I guess, I suppose.
hmm Right. And Armand, you own a company. You run it with your dad, right?
Yeah.
hmm So, can you briefly describe what your company does?
Yeah. So me and my dad, we sell artisan keycaps, which is just like the buttons on your keyboard that have custom, like hand sculpted designs. We make them out of our house and ship them all over the world. And
Mhm.
yeah, so the wage system, since I own my own business, it doesn't really apply to me since the money is like pretty much just in pocket from orders. But we have to put money into shipping and back into the production cost. So a lot of that gets cut out.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, that's really fascinating. I wanted, kind of a difference of opinions on this topic
Hmm.
for this podcast, and yeah, and I think in the American system for young men in Florida specifically, and young poor men, I think there's been kind of a shift in mindset that well, at least from what I've seen, people seek to kind of own their own businesses and be financially independent, and it's kind of something to strive towards. Owning your own business is seen kind of as a very common and very kind of or aspiration that seems very rewarding to a lot of young people. Would you guys say that you agree?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
agree.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
when I started my business, it started as like kind of a passion project, but it was also
mhm,
like over COVID. So kind of like all those factors together of like one, it's kind of breaking away from like that traditional wage system,
mhm,
as well as like the job market really closing up. It was just kind
mhm.
of like a good opportunity. I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for young men and I guess young low income first generation men as well, um, kind of, or the future of wages and the future of capitalism as a whole kind of seems uncertain. And I want to move kind of to the next topic, the rise in wages, but the fall in kind of the value of people's labor, because productivity and how much people work, the hours people work, has gone up over the years.
Hmm.
But with inflation and with real wages, kind of um, they haven't, how much people get paid hasn't risen to meet how much people produce and how much output people produce. So I was just wondering kind of why you guys think that is. I kind of well, according to certain um, certain theories, I guess I have some ideas why that is. But I was just wondering, I guess, what role does technological progress and kind of different factors, like why do people produce more, but why do wages not rise?
Yeah, I feel like as like more technologies are arising, even though people are kind of like working harder, there's always like ways that they can kind of like take away from that deductible pay. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, right.
Like as much
um,
as people improve with their work, there's always like other technological advancements that are going to improve more to the fact where the pay is going to end up staying the same.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
just yeah.
mhm. Oh no, Martin, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like in rising technology factors and businesses around the world, it's just like an easier way to cut costs, I would guess.
Hmm.
Considering the biggest cost that most businesses have is keeping their employees on livable wages. And as times change and prices of important goods keep rising, the needs for employees keep rising, so their wages would presumably be higher. But companies would probably rather use some kind of technology instead of a person because it's you don't have to pay a robot, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my dad's a truck driver, and I think that a lot of kind of, I guess, factory jobs that used to exist are going away. Jobs that require more manual labor are
Hmm.
going away, and a lot of things are being automated. And
Yes.
this affects, I guess, young first generation um, men in Florida even more because there's a bigger there's a bigger like motivating factor that you have to kind of specialize. You have to become highly educated because jobs are becoming increasingly replaced. So
Hmm.
people can be more productive, but for multiple reasons, their wages don't, or their real wages, I mean, taking inflation into account, don't go up, because even if like even jobs like accountants, soon there's going to be AI to do that automatically, and if a computer can do, I mean, even being generous, what an accountant can do in 24 hours, the computer can do in an hour. That accountant is going to be getting paid 1/24th of what they were getting paid before, just
Mm.
because, kind of the
Mm-hmm.
ratio of how fast the worker can do the work compared to technology um, is drastically different, especially since, well, technology, uh, I mean, doesn't have to be paid. And kind of, there's another angle to this too, kind of how people can use technology to be more efficient as well. Like if someone is, um, I guess if someone has their own business, maybe mowing lawns, and they get like an improved lawnmower that does it twice as fast, the people who have kind of outdated technology at that point are going to be getting paid less because there's someone that can do it faster. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, does that make sense? I don't know. I know
Yeah.
I like said a lot, and but yeah, do you guys have anything else to say on this topic? So I think we've
Yeah,
covered it.
I was about to say, like, regarding what you just said about like the
Mhm.
lawnmower example, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even like people with the more advanced technology, like if you have like a custom lawnmower or something like that that does the job twice as fast, even then you would start getting paid less because it's taking less time. So the people you're doing the job for would probably realize that and like, I'm not supposed to owe you this much money considering how quick you're doing it.
Hmm. Hmm. That's, yeah, no, that's very interesting. So it kind of, are you saying
Yeah,
that it kind of
it's
like,
something I'm thinking about, just like relating to what I did as for work. Because some people
Mhm.
would like request that what they're paying for lower the price because it took less time than they thought it would. Like that's a thing that people have thought of in the automotive industry.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And I think, as and this is a perfect that's a perfect example of how kind of these technological advances kind of impact how people um, get paid. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's it's really interesting. And I think it's a perfect example of how, young men right now are kind of being impacted by these rapid technological advances.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different with in my experience because I'm selling like a product and not a service.
mhm,
But like with like other people that are also like selling keycaps, there's been like a bit of a difference in the like methods that we've been using to make it, and I feel like that's cost me like I don't want to say it's cost me sales, but I think the difference in like end product from the method I was using previously to the method other people are using puts like a big difference into what people are willing to pay for just because there's
mhm.
like better stuff available.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's totally like completely relevant, and I think a perfect example of how kind of this fall in the value um, compared to like the average results in, I guess, the wages not rising, because if there's better goods in the market, the price of um, the price of goods made with maybe other technology might go down. So I think that's totally relevant. And I think it's fascinating how different your guys' experience are, but how totally they kind of these ideas can be applied to that. Now, moving on to the next part, I kind of want to talk about, I guess, is the wage system fair? Because I guess, and we'll move on to after this. We'll move on to, or later in the podcast, we'll mention kind of if there are any solutions or maybe alternatives. But I would argue that there is kind of inequity built into the system that young, low income men in Florida experience. And because, and I guess in all of capitalism as a whole, because when you're creating that value and you don't get paid fully for it, I mean, someone else is getting um, value for the work you did. And I mean, there is, of course, an explanation to this. I guess the capitalist explanation is that because you take on an amount of risk, that investment warrants you getting a part of the employees' work. But I was just wondering what you guys thought. And I mean, would you guys say that in general, the way that young men, in Florida personally, would you guys say that they get paid enough? Are wages fair? What would you say?
I would definitely say the wages for young men in particular, I'd say they're pretty fair. It just
Hmm.
depends on if you want to increase it. Sometimes it doesn't get very fair because
Hmm. What do
sometimes
you
people
What do you
think
mean
that
by
they
that?
deserve like an increased wage, like a raise, and then it
Hmm.
gets difficult because I have a friend who had an experience like that at automotive service who did a lot of work, got a lot of certifications, and the company was owing him a raise, and he never got it. And I think that's pretty messed up.
I agree. I feel like at a starting level, it's somewhat fair, but as expertise in I'm kind of just reiterating what you said, but as expertise in the industry increases, wages don't necessarily increase at the same rate,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to like younger men.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I guess I'd say that in a the way that people get paid, um, or I would argue that capitalism or capital's goal, the goal of the employer is kind of to pay their employees as little as possible while keeping them alive. And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but
Mm,
it kind of makes sense logically
yeah.
that the employer wants you to keep working, but they want to pay you as little as possible, just enough so that you're alive, you're working, and you're
Hmm.
putting in as much effort as you can,
Yeah.
but so little as they make as much profit as possible off your work. So, how do you guys kind of feel about this idea? Would you guys say that I guess young men go through this, and I guess how much? What is the responsibility of employers? How and to like, should they pay people more, or kind of is the func is the system of capitalism functioning for young low income men in Florida as it should?
I definitely agree with what you're saying about how companies try to pay their employees as little as possible, but to make them have a way of living and keep working for the company. Because that's definitely something I've seen in most of the businesses that I've noticed.
Hmm. Right, and your personal experience in I guess in Jiffy Lube.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Do you think that I guess they kind of could have paid you more but didn't, or
absolutely, definitely for
mhm,
sure. I mean, in my case, I guess because I was like not a very experienced worker. I was just getting
mm,
into the industry. For me, it was kind of all right, the pay, but my service manager, who was I think only 2 years above me at the time, like 19 or 20, he
mhm,
had much more experience. Still a pretty young man in the working world, and he was
mhm,
barely getting paid enough to have his own place and buy his own food. And he was like the second most experienced person at the shop. And he
yeah.
always
Wow.
like asked the manager for a raise, asked the company for a raise, and it would never come.
Yeah. Wow. That's really crazy.
Yeah,
And so yeah, Armand. I know you're a business owner. Armand, have you worked in like a position with a wage before? I remember you said you did some research, right?
Yeah, I did an internship over the summer last year where they paid me. But
Hmm.
it was a stipend, so I wasn't getting paid like hourly.
Oh, I
Well, I
see.
mean, yeah, I had to work a certain amount of hours per day, and then they paid me like the wage up to the stipend. You know what I mean?
Wait, can you elaborate on that?
Like they paid me a certain amount per hour, and then it was a $3,000 stipend. So I was set to work like hourly to make up
Mhm.
the money until the full like stipend was paid.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So you kind of know what it's like to be a business owner, to own the capital, and to get paid in the wage system. Do you think that kind of the capitalist and the business owner has certain advantages? And how would you say that your experience is kind of contrasted?
Yeah, I feel like as a business owner, it's how do I put it? It's like you're obviously like getting more because you're paying yourself, so it feels like
Mm,
you're kind of you feel like you're getting paid more fairly versus when you're being paid a wage, it feels like you're getting paid by somebody. I feel like
mhm,
my experience working like with a wage is kind of different because like I knew how much money I was getting from the jump, not like getting
mhm,
paid like hourly like forever and then like it can go up or down.
mhm,
But I feel like as a business owner versus like getting paid hourly, it feels like you're getting paid more like for the work that you put in as a business owner.
mhm. Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I see that.
Because yeah, you make the goods and then you get paid um, by how much people are willing to pay for the goods. Whereas in the wage system, it's kind of up to the person employing you to decide how much you get paid. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but but yeah, but yeah, aside from the physical boundary of kind of keeping the worker healthy and alive, there's also kind of the historical boundary of I guess kind of traditionally how much people have been paid because you know people you can't suddenly change pay for a certain kind of type of job. For example, if like people are getting paid a lot, um, I guess for certain jobs like maybe for example, uh, like maybe I guess jobs like accounting or something like that that gets paid a good amount, as much as the maybe the employer wants to lower the wage, but they can't because accountants have been paid. People expect a certain amount of pay, and if they set it too low, then
Mm-hmm.
nobody's going to apply to that job. So it's kind of the supply and demand of what kind of people would go for, but also to pay as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, yeah. Next, I kind of wanted to connect this to male, the experiences of young men in Florida, in particular. Um, Martin, me and you are first gen and low
Yeah.
income, hmm and yeah, Armand, you come from. I mean, your mother is an immigrant, right? Who,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, who completed college. So I was just wondering about how kind of the experiences could be different, especially first of all, just for men in the capitalist society. And I was wondering if you guys thought that kind of the traditional view of, I guess, men as the breadwinners and the providers is something that's still around today, or I guess how uh, I guess because men oftentimes, I feel like there's a bit of a stereotype that men are judged. I mean, their success is judged based off how much they earn in their lives. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a man with a higher paycheck is going to be admired, and people would say that they're more successful in their lives than people who
Yeah.
earn less. Yeah. So, how do you guys feel about that, especially for
Yeah.
young men who are kind of looking to get jobs?
I think money, like you said, it's people that are getting paid more are obviously valued more higher. And when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to like immigrants trying to make a living, I feel like there's still a lot of stigma for like immigrants, like the American way and stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like I feel like there's a lot of expectation for immigrants to kind of come in and strike it big once they get into America, and I feel like it's kind of a I don't want to say toxic, but like a bit of an unrealistic standard that like
Mm-hmm.
every immigrant has to make their own path because that's not like everybody's way. And
Mm-hmm.
then coming from like a place where you're talking about with men being the breadwinners, I feel like it's still pretty expected. But I think it's been getting a lot. People have been getting a lot more progressive with like not expecting men to be the breadwinners, either having like both partners working
Mhm.
or the woman in a relationship like that working.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's still a bit of a what's the word? Like I feel like it's a bit more expected, but it's definitely been becoming a lot more progressive lately.
Mhm. Yeah, and yeah, I think my own experience as a first generation immigrant, I immigrated to the United States from Russia when I was 4 years old, and I definitely think that there is kind of that expectation, especially when you talk to, I mean, family members. These kind of capitalist capitalist ideas are so ingrained, and especially for me, it's like so surprising because I had parents that kind of, I mean, I had parents who lived in the Soviet Union, um, and the way that capitalism has become such a standard. I mean, well, I mean, even though people have lived through different experiences, kind of the fact that um, this kind of idea of men being the breadwinners and having to earn money seems to be like multi-ethnic and multicultural, and even for immigrants, and especially for immigrants and low-income young men, I feel like their families kind of expect them to um, really, really push themselves to get a higher position in society um, than that of their parents. So, would you guys agree with that? Or
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm,
just wanted to add something about, like, my own experiences really quick
mhm,
about all that, like, expectations from your families and all that, because I
mhm,
personally my parents immigrated to the United States in the early 2000s, I believe, right before I was born, and,
mhm,
they've always wanted me to be way more successful than they ever have been, because I'm pretty sure that's, like, a common expectation of most parents,
mhm.
but
Yeah,
still,
definitely.
like, anytime I looked at a potential career in my future, my mom would always wanna make sure what the wages were first. Like, I
Mhm,
remember one time I wanted to be, like, a car designer in my past, and I told my mom, "Yeah, this
mhm,
makes around, like, 60,000 a year." And she was really disappointed to hear that, and she's like, "You should really be striving for something that earns, like, 100,000 plus." And I was thinking about how I wouldn't be happy if I wanted something with 100,000 plus, but I wasn't doing what I wanted, because that why would I want that, even though it's just for the money?
mhm,
And
mhm,
I think it stems both from immigrating to the U.S. and hoping for a better future, and
mhm,
from coming from a past where it's really difficult to
mhm,
have a good income. Because in Argentina, the economy has always been in the gutter. It's been really
mhm,
difficult to like keep your money, make money, have a lot of money. Inflation
mhm,
is increasing every day. We hear about how
mhm,
much the dollar compared to the pesos are. It's crazy stuff, and I think
mhm.
that's translated to what they want me and my future to look like.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that, when I was just starting out high school, I remember I wanted a career in museum studies. I mean, it was kind
Hmm.
of a silly idea looking back on it, but I remember I told my grandma, and she was like totally against it just because, that's not kind of the stereotype of success for immigrant families.
Yeah.
It's always doctor, lawyer,
Yep. Yep.
engineer, and just that kind of pressure, especially if you have low income parents, because I have a stay-at-home mom, or no,
Hmm.
I have a mom who she takes care of me and my brother, and works part-time as a secretary as well. And then my dad is a truck driver. So having these parents with these kind of low-income professions, I think puts a lot of pressure to kind of make your own way and find a lot of success, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
expectation for men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like my parents have always pushed me in kind of the same way. Where like I've always like really enjoyed data, computer science, which is what I'm like pursuing in college. But
Mhm,
with anything else that I want to pursue, like I'm really interested in art and music and pursuing a
Hmm.
career in that previously. Everything is always like make sure you are getting your degree and getting a six-figure job first before you do
Yep.
anything else, and then that'll always be a hobby. And
Yep.
while both of my parents aren't immigrants, I feel like it's still kind of pushed the same way of really just making sure that money is set first, because
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's like just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's, I guess, a big part of, I mean, the experience of young men in Florida, who, you have to find financial security. And I think that's become such a big prerogative for people that it's kind of become the top priority. And it's a real shame when people can't pursue their passions
Yeah.
that could possibly provide more benefit to them, and maybe even provide more benefit to other people if you make some really great music or a form of art or
Mhm.
design for a car or anything like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely
Mhm.
think it's a big problem. But yeah, moving on to kind of, I want to get your guys' opinions on unwaged work and kind of certain privileges that men may have, because it can be argued that people volunteer, people do research for no pay. People have passion
Mhm.
projects, and this idea that people who get paid more can benefit or contribute more to society is a bit kind of it can be wrong sometimes, and it can really um, stereotypes or groups. And I also wanted to bring up kind of because we're all young men, and we already talked about how it's kind of expected to the idea of being the breadwinner is still around. But I kind of want to flip that and look at the female perspective, because although I think there have been steps towards equality, there is still sometimes the idea that women should kind of stay at home and take care of the kids, and because they're not paid for that, it's not taken seriously
Yeah.
sometimes, and it's not like viewed as real work. So I wonder how you guys feel about that. Uh, Hello.
Yeah. You're still there. I'm just thinking about that.
Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, no, it was a lot. I thought I crashed. I was like scared
Yeah.
that the recording would stop. But yeah, just I guess to elaborate a bit more, I was kind of wondering how the wage system dictates the social roles. Like men get paid, women stay at home. How have these kind of become the new norms? Because I mean, and like, where did they come from? Um,
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like hmm, I feel like it's kind of like trying to be seen that the person who's like making the money is
mhm,
more in control of the money, and I feel
mhm,
like that's kind of unfair when it comes to like families when the man is making more, so they're like the man of the house, that kind of
mhm.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think. I guess it also, I guess, puts more. I mean, aside from putting more pressure on men, I feel like it kind of discredits the work women put in.
Yeah,
And yeah, and my own mom, she
Mm.
kind of, and I think it's a very harmful stereotype to think that women kind of naturally are drawn towards housework.
Mhm.
Because sometimes you guys are familiar with the stereotype, right? That women are kind of more suited to things like
Yeah.
cleaning and cooking,
Yeah.
and yeah, and um, seeing my mom take care of me and my brother. And I think she's a my own mom has kind of made it clear that she doesn't do this because she enjoys it. She does
Yeah.
it because she has to. And I think it's
Mm.
important to recognize that unwaged work as a whole is kind of very important to society, because women put in all this work that helps, and kind of this the way that our society is set up. Um,
Mhm.
people who don't make wages still contribute a lot. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, for sure.
I was just
Mhm,
gonna say something like that all that stuff about women being like the stay-at-home mom and doing all this stuff at home. I think that's
mhm,
something that really it translates from a cultural standpoint
mhm,
because I know most of the women in my family, they've always been raised on being stay-at-home moms, stay at home, do all this stuff at home. and then your husband comes home, and then you make dinner for him and all that, like traditional lifestyle. And it doesn't go away once you immigrate to the United States. It just stays and gets passed down as a further tradition. Because I recently traveled back to the home country, and I was like speaking with my grandma about all that stuff, and she always considered herself as a stay-at-home woman, as because she would stay at home, clean the house, do the dishes, all that, like, I guess, womanly stuff that they would consider in Argentina. And they teach that to their daughters or their granddaughters, their nieces, and it's just passed down. And they don't see it as wrong or anything. They just see it as tradition, and that's just what the women do. And the men go work at the factory or something difficult, and the women do the easy job at home. But they don't recognize that it's something important, and they don't recognize that men can do it too if they wanted to.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like for both of my parents work, but with my grandma, who I guess you could say is like a bit more traditional, she's always told me like you need to make sure that you're like working to support the house. Like it's the only way it can be. Kind of the same thing as you're saying, Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a dynamic, how it affects young men, but then on the opposite, kind of the privileges that young men have sometimes, and the difference in expectations is super interesting. And this is why, kind of I argue that thinking strictly in terms of kind of wages dictate how much work you do, how much you produce, and how much benefit you contribute to society is really harmful. And some people can sometimes kind of put themselves in kind of this stereotypical way of thinking, where that can harm people. So now I kind of want to talk about any like potential solutions to this. And I know this is kind of completely up to opinion, but I was just kind of wondering how do these problems get solved? And just I guess to get the ball rolling, I'll start with my own opinion on how young men, low income men, first generation men in Florida can not not fall into these pitfalls of the wage system, not get paid as little as possible by their employer, and I guess maybe in the future not be expected to be the breadwinners. I think education's a big part of it. Kind of get uh, many more Americans, many more immigrants are being educated, and getting the education is really the backbone of being able to recognize your own position, how much your own labor and work is worth, and kind of being able to step back and look at kind of what positions, privileges, and maybe stereotypes that have been kind of placed on you by society. Um, but for a more like short-term solution, I think that the well, you guys probably know that I've like advocated this for a while, but I think collective bargaining is
Yeah.
the old union
Yeah.
is kind of a good way for workers to band together to kind of keep the employer in check, in terms of the wage system, and also maybe even kind of function as a way to kind of break down these old stereotypes of um, men and women, men working and women staying at home, by kind of being more inclusive and um, functioning to make workplaces more inclusive. So I was wondering, there's also, I guess, some people advocate for companies to be employee owned. I recently found out, there's things like employees holding stocks. I recently found out, I think Publix is actually employee owned. The family that started Publix owns it together with their employees, which I think is super cool. So, and stuff like, the ideas of, I guess, socialism are still kind of floating around, although, you know, it's unsure whether that's the best solution. But yeah, how would you guys improve the wage system?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know too much about
Oof.
like socialism or anything like that, but
Mm.
I feel like employee-owned companies and like unionizing are really good. I'm really interested in employee-owned companies. I think that that's a really cool concept.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel like I've definitely seen something related or similar to that in a big corporation where they let their employees take part in owning stocks of the company. I'm not sure if it was Apple or
Mhm.
Google or something big like that, but I know I've seen that
Mhm.
somewhere, and I think
Hmm.
that's very interesting
Yeah, I
because you kind
definitely
of have
think.
like an incentive for working hard for
Mhm.
the company because you get to see your money go up in the stocks, supposedly.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. And hold on, what was I forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, employee owned. Oh yeah, I think you know, kind of companies having a responsibility to their employees and to society. That kind of idea kind of fell apart because now companies try to do whatever, ethical or not, to increase
Mm.
profits. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what I would argue. I'm not saying that that's the objective truth, but oil
Yeah.
companies and stuff like that. And then there's the kind of the elephant in the room of corporate philanthropy, like when
Mhm.
companies kind of give back. And is it a PR stunt, or are they actually trying to
Mhm.
kind of help society?
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I think it really starts with the employees and kind of asking for change. So
Yeah. Because the
Yeah,
employees are the backbone of the company, I guess. With no employees, no company. So.
that's
exactly.
true. But yeah, I think that is all we had for today. In conclusion, we talked about the wage system as it applies to young, um, first generation and low income men in Florida who are seeking employment or have employment or were employed. And, we talked about how the wage system um, kind of applies to men, how men are expected to be the breadwinners, how it applies to first generation and immigrant men, how they're expected to be strivers in society, and also how it applies to women and how people who don't make wages are kind of stereotyped as less productive. We also talked about if wages were fair, how employers seek to pay as little as possible, how wages haven't risen, um, and the rise in wages hasn't reflected how the productivity has risen, and kind of just in general how wages seem to reflect the amount of work you put in, but it's actually much more complicated than that. So yeah, thank you Armand and Martin for joining me
Mhm.
today. And yeah, if you guys have anything to say, now's the time. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for having us on.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'll see you guys later.
Yes, sir.
Yep, see you later.